Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Earle Wellbeing Show. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Emily Johnson, also known to many of us as the arthritis foodie. And lots of us, I think, assume arthritis is something that only affects us as we age. But Emily was just 20 years old when she first experienced her symptoms of arthritis and a weakened immune system. And feeling a lack of community for this very reason, Emily started an Instagram account under the same alias, that is the arthritis foodie. And she's used it to document her journey, and she discovered a lot of natural remedies and helpful tips along the way. And eventually she found a host of people with the same experiences as her. And the community has now grown beyond Instagram into a supportive community of people suffering from autoimmune disorders of all kinds. And we're speaking today following the publication of her new book. It's called Beat Arthritis Naturally, which is a guide to boosting health and managing your symptoms, packed with lifestyle tips and recipes and all kinds of good things. And she's worked with rheumatologists and immunologists and doctors and more to bring us all the best of what she's learnt. And I can't wait for you to hear this fascinating chat. So much that we talked about, and I think not just in the area of arthritis, but also autoimmune diseases and chronic pain. Lots of helpful information, both for those with it and also for those living alongside others who are sharing that experience. Well, as always, please do share your experience after listening to the show. If you'd like to join me on Instagram to share your thoughts in the comments there, I would love to hear your feedback. So without further ado, let's hear it from Emily. So,
Lovely.
Emily, welcome to my podcast. You are very welcome here, and I've been really looking forward to chatting to you because I think we're so familiar with the term arthritis, and yet, unpacking it and exploring it is so fascinating. Where did your journey with arthritis really start?
So, really, for me, it started when I was 20 years old, when I first got my symptoms. And I was extremely poorly. I had food poisoning, which then led to inflammation and autoimmune disease based arthritis, whereby my body started attacking my good cells and I had a lot of fluid in my joints. It was classed as initially as being an infection based inflammatory arthritis. They said it would last just a year, but actually it progressed and I've been living with it now for the last 8 years.
Oh my goodness. And is
Yeah.
this a relatively common thing? I've not actually heard of arthritis being triggered by food poisoning.
Yeah, I like to think of it as a bit more. It's a bit more complex than that. But the way I talk about it in my book is that your genetics hold the bullets and your environment pulls the trigger. So I was always genetically susceptible to having arthritis, and it was something in my environment that triggered that episode. And also, it wasn't necessarily just the food poisoning. I was also quite run down. My immune system was probably not in a very good place anyway. I was not eating that well. I'd not slept a lot. I'd worked 6 weeks as a tutor in Italy and was traveling a lot and all that kind of stuff. So I was already kind of not in a good way with it. And then, yeah, layered on this food poisoning that lasted 2 weeks, and then slowly, progressively, the symptoms went from there.
So it was a
In my
perfect
yeah.
storm, really. I mean, I'm a little bit familiar with that with my eldest daughter Lily, who has also a chronic autoimmune issue. And although it's migraine related, we've sort of traced a lot of the origins of that back to catching giardia in India and having
Oh
sort of
gosh.
real gut issues. And this whole
Mm.
gut brain axis is it's just so fascinating, isn't it? That so many of our responses and our neurological and our immune system responses are actually triggered by what's happening in the gut.
Absolutely. I mean, well, 70 to 80% of our immune system is in our gut. So, for me, I just think this is the key to so much. And also, in the research for this book, I discovered that we actually have as many neurons as a cat's brain has inside our gut that is constantly communicating with our brain all the time. And
Yeah,
I just thought that was absolutely fascinating. Yeah, it's
yeah.
called the enteric system. And it's
The
in constant
enteric
communication.
system.
Yes,
Mm.
enteric. Yes,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, in fact, Lily actually, just to digress at a moment, she's going to see a neurological gastroenterologist. So I
Wow,
think,
that's
this
amazing.
whole, a professor, and then this whole connection between the brain and the gut, I think is just being so strongly recognised now, which hopefully is going to hold a big part of the key for the future in helping people with
Absolutely.
chronic pain and chronic issues and illnesses. Before we move on to talk about treatment and your food therapies, which are just so fascinating, can we just
Mhm.
cover off the different types of arthritis? Because I know when we're talking about it, it's a very broad church, isn't it? But we have osteoarthritis, we have rheumatoid arthritis.
Yeah, we've got
What are the
psoriatic
different groups
arthritis.
here, and how do we differentiate between them?
So there's actually over 100 different types of
Oh, wow.
arthritis. There's so many. But osteoarthritis, of course, is the most common one, and it's the one that people have heard of the most. And then rheumatoid arthritis is second to that in terms of how many people live with it. But rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, all of these kinds of arthritic conditions are autoimmune disease based, and have a lot of influence on your immune system and are kind of instigated by that. Whereas osteoarthritis, you can tend to get it if you have had an injury that then leads to problems in your joints. Yeah, there's so many different types, but they're all chronic inflammatory conditions.
So
Inflammation is a
that's the
common
common
theme.
factor, is it, that they are common pain conditions caused by inflammation within the joints, or caused by a variety of different
Yes,
reasons? Is
exactly
that
that.
correct?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And so when you were affected, you were obviously very young. So how easy
Yeah.
was it for you to have that recognized as an arthritic condition? Because it is something that we tend to associate with aging and degenerative disease, isn't it?
Yes, to be honest with you, Liz, it took a long time actually to get that diagnosis, like almost 2 years, to get a full diagnosis, and it was a really difficult time because I just didn't know what was happening to me, and I used to wake up and not be able to move my hands. There was one time when my thumbs were so stiff I couldn't bend them, and I went to A&E because I just thought, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to do, and I was at university. Yeah, it really did take a long time to get that diagnosis because I really don't look like I've got arthritis or
No,
anything
you don't. No,
sort of going
and
on
for
at
those
all.
listening,
And
obviously
that's the whole
you
point.
can hop over to YouTube to watch this podcast. But yes, you look the picture of young, gorgeous health and
Oh,
well-being
thank
and vitality.
you.
And so yes, you're not what I would imagine if somebody says, picture somebody with arthritis. It certainly wouldn't be somebody who looks like you. Is it then a hidden disability? Is it something that people live with, this chronic pain, without showing any outward signs?
Yes, for some people, definitely. And even now, I don't necessarily have the swollen joints that I used to, but there are moments when I am in a lot of pain, but you wouldn't be able to see
Sure.
it. It's not like a broken arm or a bruise, or, similarly with mental health, you just don't see these things,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that they're not happening.
Yeah.
So yes, definitely, I do talk about it as being invisible, and sort of trying to talk about these things and explain what's going on. It is actually less of a burden than trying to hold it in and trying to pretend that you're okay when
Yeah.
really you're not.
So when you had your original diagnosis, how then were you advised to treat it?
So initially, they have a plethora of different medications that they will put you on and try you on, and of course you have to go step by step and try each different one. And I ended up, I'm still on it now, actually, methotrexate, but I've managed to reduce it through my other lifestyle changes. But I'm on methotrexate, which is a sort of disease-modifying rheumatic drug, and it's sort of also a chemotherapy drug. It's quite strong. It's immunotherapy.
Gosh.
So I was put on that. First the tablets and then the injections that once a week, and then also Humira, which is a biologic drug, which I take twice a month. But I've managed to reduce I was on the highest dose of 25 mg once a week, but I'm now on 15. And I hope to reduce it again eventually. But it's because I'm just in such a good place now with it. And also if it did start to get, in a worse, I could always go back on it if I needed to.
And these drugs, are they to manage symptoms and control inflammation, or are they basically to control pain? What's their purpose?
So they're to manage the inflammation in the body, which then in turn, hopefully will manage your pain as
Yeah.
well. And yeah, I also had steroid injections as well for the pain in the past. And I'm prescribed cocodamol, that I'm told to take 4 times a
Oh my
day, which
goodness.
I
No, I mean
don't. I
that,
choose
and
not to.
that's one way
Um,
to ruin your digestive tract, isn't it, and your gut?
exactly, yeah. So it's there if I need it, but I really try not to use that. Probably use it twice a month, if
Mm.
that. I really try and do a lot of natural remedies now, and have noticed a massive difference in
Excellent.
doing
Well,
that.
let's come on to that, because I'm sure people will be super interested to hear about your journey and the things that you've found helpful. What
Yeah.
did you turn to first to try?
So the first thing I looked into was food, as you can tell by this
Yes.
book. So that was sort of the main thing that I started looking into first, and I started to cut out things that thought might potentially be inflammatory, and then try to sort of change my diet into a more anti-inflammatory based diet, very Mediterranean
Mhm.
style diet, and that was the first thing I looked into, and then I sort of started to look more holistically at exercise, at sleep, at
Mhm.
mindfulness, and sort of natural pain remedies, and sort of to look at the whole picture, because I think it's not just food, it's everything else
Yeah.
around it. So yeah, but food was my first point of
So
call.
when you were looking at food, did you look principally to start with at cutting things out or adding things in, or both?
Both, yeah. So initially, I started looking at cutting out things that I thought might be inflammatory to me, such as dairy. I tried cutting out dairy. There was some people saying that nightshade
Mm.
vegetables. I don't know if you've heard
I've
of that, but
definitely heard of
tomatoes
that.
and
The deadly nightshade
peppers and things
family.
like that.
Yes, peppers, aubergines,
Yeah, tried
tomatoes,
that.
potatoes. Did that have any effect for you?
So I found that like hot white potatoes, like deep fried potatoes, that kind of that they were really not great. I mean, anything deep fried, I know about it the next
But
day.
would that be the seed oils then,
um,
the inflammatory seed oils, rather than the actual food?
yeah, and yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and it being at a high
Mhm.
temperature, cooking at high heat and high oil, and also they're not. It's not a good type of
Yeah.
oil either. It's quite processed oils. So it's probably that. Um, and yeah, I didn't really drink alcohol anyway, because of the medication that I'm on. But I also just completely cut it out. Anything like really heavily sugary, cut that out. Changed my breakfast. Now I have like porridge, or actually I've had overnight oats this
Great,
morning.
full of butyrate, overnight
um,
oats, so very good for your gut.
yes, I love overnight oats.
And then did
Yeah.
you look at things, you talk about
Yeah.
cutting out sugary foods, did you look at things like keto,
Mhm.
very high fat, very low carb, or zero carb?
Yeah, I looked at those kinds of diets as well, and yeah, I honestly, when I look back, I really did try
Mm.
everything. I tried absolutely everything, and I just had a food diary, sort of kept a track of things that might be triggering, things that were helping, and I even actually tracked sort of like my toilet habits
Mhm.
and sort of like what that was like and how that was happening, especially because I started to learn how much the gut was connected to my immune system. I thought, okay, it's worth tracking that as well.
And what have you learnt
um
from that carrying
yeah.
forward? What foods do you now avoid specifically?
So I always say actually that it's quite
Sure.
personal, in terms of we've all got such unique gut, unique genetics, and unique sort of environment and everything. And everybody's arthritis is different. But for me, I find that really high processed dairy, so like really like
Cheese
cheesy,
string, that kind of thing.
processed, yeah, like
Cheese
oh
made with
gosh, like all like
wafers.
really high processed cheese, yeah.
Okay, we get the picture.
All of those sorts of things, yeah, that really is quite triggering for me.
Yeah,
And deep fried foods, they're definitely the two sort of things that I've
yeah.
noticed the most.
And
Yeah.
then sugars, are you okay with sugars, or do you have to watch those?
Yeah, I tend not to eat
Mm,
too much sugary things. I have a little bit of honey in my
mhm,
green tea, and occasionally on my porridge, but other than that, I try not to have
yeah.
too much sugar. No, that's something
So those are
yeah,
the
don't
things
really
that
have
you're
much
not
of. Yeah.
having. What things do you make a real conscious effort to add in?
as many plants as possible
Hmm.
into my week. It's lots of fiber, it's lots of phytonutrients and polyphenols, and micronutrients and minerals and vitamins, all of the good stuff. So yeah, I try and get as many plants as I can into my week, and herbs and
Mm,
spices as well, like
yeah.
turmeric and cinnamon, ginger, all of those sorts of things, which have got wonderful anti-inflammatory properties and
We hear
antioxidants
a
as
lot, I
well.
think, about turmeric as being anti-inflammatory and people
Mm,
taking it specifically for joint pain. What do you think of that? Does the
mm,
research
mm.
bear it out, do you think?
There is a lot of research around turmeric, and I definitely think if you can cook with it, absolutely
Mm.
get it into your day. I think just taking a shot and expecting that to do something when you're not eating well is probably a bit futile. But I think if you're cooking with it, you're using it in your diet, absolutely. And also, you should always have it with black pepper because that increases the absorption by
It's amazing, isn't it?
2000%, in case people don't know that. So yeah, you should really be having it with black pepper. Whatever you do,
Yeah,
have it
and
with
some
black
fat to
pepper.
help the absorption. It's
Yes, and
interesting,
some
isn't it?
fat, exactly, yeah, which is
Yeah,
why cooking
yeah.
with it is
In
great.
Indian cooking,
Yeah,
it's very much with the fats and the oils, the coconut fat and the ghee and that kind of thing. And then
exactly,
other
yeah,
herbs and
exactly, yeah.
spices, have you found other things that are particularly useful?
So I like cooking with a lot of like rosemary, thyme, basil. Those plants and herbs are really great as well. So I have a lot of recipes with
Hmm.
those in. And they've got anti-inflammatory properties too. But yeah, I did so much
Yeah.
research for this book and got about 13 different healthcare professionals on board as well to sort of
Yeah,
sign off
I
the
was looking
content.
actually at the
Um,
people who had contributed and helped, and several favorites actually
yeah.
from our
Yeah.
This Our Wellbeing podcast, Dr.
Oh,
Rupi, Dr. Jenna
yes.
Macciochi, all lots of familiar, friendly names who work in this space, who are very much of the opinion that food is medicine. Obviously, Dr. Jenna with her immunology
Mm,
background,
mm,
super important, and Dr. Rupi
absolutely.
with his doctor's
Yeah,
kitchen, believing that fundamentally doctors need to be taught about food. How receptive were doctors to
definitely.
you when you started talking about diet? Were they encouraging? Were they positive? Did they think, well, actually, it's not going to make any difference? What was their view?
They weren't really that into
Mm.
it, to be honest, when I started asking questions and wanting more information. And all they'd ever say was just have a healthy, balanced
It's
diet,
not super
but they
helpful,
couldn't
is it,
really
really?
tell me what that was. No, and it was quite frustrating, really, because I was like, I'd got to, when I started looking into food, I'd got to a point with my arthritis where my medicine wasn't really working anymore. I was completely just felt so flat and fed up, and I was like, I can't carry on like this. And so, I did start looking on my own, because I thought, well, if you're not going to be able to give me those answers and help, then I'm going to have to
Mm.
start looking elsewhere. And I'm still on medication. Obviously, I'm not saying people should come off it. It's more
Sure.
can you do alongside it to make you feel better, feel more in control, and sort of more have a handle on your
Mm.
pain and handle on your condition. So yeah, but I definitely didn't get that much help from doctors or my
Well, it's
rheumatologist in
good that
terms
you've
of
got,
diet. No,
access
absolutely
to some of the
not.
people that we talked about and some of the other resources. Coming back to the point that so
Yeah.
much of our immune system and our inflammation and the pain receptors, are stemming from
Mm,
the
mm.
activity of the bacteria in our gut. What steps do you take to actively promote and support healthy gut bacteria for arthritis?
So for me, I have got to make sure that I've got fiber in my diet from day to day. That's really important. So like the plant-based diet that I'm talking about, Mediterranean diet, healthy fats, not too much sugar, lots of fruits and vegetables, your legumes, your beans, all of that sort of thing. And I home make
Mm.
everything as well. So, even like, your salad dressings, I'll do a bit of olive oil, balsamic, apple cider vinegar, a bit of honey, black pepper, all of those sorts of things, trying really hard to sort of do everything from home, so you can also
Yes.
see what's in your food and see what you are eating, which is really important. And another thing that I do, which, if anybody who knows me, they'll know that I go on and on about this, but
Really?
matcha green tea is one of my
And do you think,
favorite
I mean,
drinks.
is that not
Yeah.
just because
Yeah.
you like it, but do you think that there are benefits to be had from matcha tea?
Definitely. So it's actually got 137 times more antioxidants than one cup of green tea
Really?
if you have one matcha.
I mean, I knew it
Yeah.
was powerful,
Hmm.
and I've
Yeah.
actually done, programs
It's
on
very
matcha,
powerful.
and that's because they actually take the whole leaf and grind it up, isn't it, into a powder. So you're swallowing the whole leaf rather
Exactly
than just
that.
sort of infusing the leaf and tipping the residue away to drink the liquid. You're actually drinking the
Yes.
whole leaf. So
Yeah.
how many cups of matcha would you have a day?
Exactly that.
Just one?
So
Hmm.
just one is more than enough. Yeah, just one in the morning, and it gives you, well, they say, it's sort of that you get the caffeine, but not in the same way that you would get it from coffee. So with coffee, you have a sort of a
Yeah.
spike of the caffeine, of the energy, and then a drop. But with matcha, you have the caffeine that sort of like gently releases during the day. So it gives you this energy just very, very calmly, and it also releases L-theanine in the brain. So you have this release of energy and also this calmness at the same time. And it's blissful. I honestly notice when I have it,
That's
I haven't had one
amazing.
yet
I mean,
today,
I
but
have heard
I
about
definitely do
I have
notice
heard
it's this
about
calm energy.
L-theanine and just how helpful it is, and actually take it
Yeah.
sometimes at bedtime just for that calming. And one of the reasons that matcha is so
Yeah,
useful
so
is that you have
calming.
a little bit of caffeine, but it's balanced with the L-theanine.
Hmm.
Do you find it actually has an
With the
effect on your
L-theanine.
pain?
Yeah. Yes,
Mm.
in some senses, yes, definitely, because it's not only the antioxidants and the inflammatory part of it, but
Hmm.
also it's the
Yeah.
mindfulness of making the matcha. I've got my bowl, my whisk, and it's just a real moment for myself when I'm doing that. And I think because mindfulness is also so important in keeping your inflammation levels low, and stress is a huge trigger for me. I know we were talking about food triggers, but stress is a massive trigger
So
for my
how do
pain and
you then put
inflammation.
that into practice in daily
Yeah.
life to manage your stress and to keep these triggers down?
So for me, yoga is an extremely good way of managing
Hmm.
my mindfulness and staying calm, and also going for
Yeah.
walks. I know it sounds so simple, but it's all
Yes.
we've been allowed to do in the last sort of year, isn't it? But going for a walk and being outside, and really being outside. I sometimes I just won't even listen to music, won't have my
Just be.
book, and I'll just be in the
Mm.
park. Yeah. And finding those moments for yourself, because I think in the world now we're always switched on, we're always
Yeah.
accessible, and I think having those moments to yourself are really important, and going to bed and reading my
Yes.
book and putting my phone you know elsewhere, and I'm not on it, and I read a chapter of my book every night, and that also is a good way to wind down and be calm, and kind of
Yeah.
manage that stress as well, because I think if you're always on,
You're absolutely
you
right. I
don't
mean,
have that
I do
time.
try and go out. I mean, I live down in the West Country, or I'm up in London where I can walk in a park. And I
Mm.
love going out and getting some air. But then you do see all these people who are just sort of looking down at their phones and their screens as they're walking. But it is this
Mm,
kind of
mm,
breaking that cycle of addiction, isn't it?
mm.
Where you can either, I mean, sometimes not take
Yeah.
your phone with you, but that just sounds so traumatic, I think, to some people. They couldn't possibly leave the house without their phone, but at least switch it off. So you've got it, or should you want to take a
Yes.
lovely photograph or something.
Yes.
And I was reminded the other day, actually, somebody who just
Yes.
came out with this expression, which I've heard before, but it's just so true about, about being and, to just be. And they just said, we are, of course, human beings. We're not human doings. And sometimes we just need to just
Mm,
be.
mm. That is
What
very
about
true.
exercise? You talked earlier about how, exercise regimes can help. If you're managing pain, do you have to physically push yourself through a pain threshold then to stay active?
Sometimes, yes, sometimes I do, but in my book I say, you've really got to check in with yourself. If it is
Yeah.
too much that day, it probably is too much. If it feels too much, so have a rest and have a look at doing it the next day or a couple of days after. But in my exercise chapter, I've actually worked with a physiotherapist who works with chronic illness patients.
Mm.
She's called Actively Autoimmune, Zoe Mackenzie, and she's absolutely fantastic. So she's actually shared some exercises that are really sort of low impact and easy
Yeah.
to do for people that are living with chronic diseases and inflammatory conditions. Um, so I think if you do want to start small, that's a good place to go. You know, and I think there's the danger, isn't there, of going on
Oh,
Instagram or
crazy.
YouTube and
Yeah,
seeing
no,
all
no,
these fitness
don't do
fanatics
that.
doing all
Yeah.
these ridiculous things, and you know, and I just think really exercise is about you and what's comfortable for you and what works for you. You know, and there's no point in trying to sort of aim for that, because that probably won't work for your body and your
Yeah.
level
No,
of you know,
it is.
need.
You have to just to pace it. I remember
Yeah.
talking to a physio who said, you know, with sometimes with chronic pain, it's about saying to patients, you know, you need to have a 2-minute walk. And if you can do a 2-minute walk, and then the next week, not even, you know, the next day, but the next week, you know, we're going to try a 3-minute walk. And, you know, really, really simple, gentle,
Exactly.
easy, achievable goals. Because I imagine there's nothing worse than kind of setting yourself a goal and then failing, and then the impact of that mentally, emotionally. How do you maintain your emotional resilience? I mean, you know, you're a gorgeous young woman to be living with this chronic pain all the time. How do you stay mentally positive?
That's a tough question. I think there are days when I don't, and I just tell myself that that's okay. I think, you know, yeah, you really just have to try and remember that this isn't your enemy. This isn't something that's happened to you. You have to work with it. So for the longest time, I was like, it's me versus my arthritis. It's, you know, separate to me. It's something that I don't want to associate myself with. I was so ashamed of it. I
Really?
only told my mum and my sister that I even had arthritis. I was really, yeah, I was so embarrassed and felt so sort of like, oh, I don't want to be that. I don't want people to know. I just want to carry on, you know, and just sort of completely ignored it. And I
Yeah.
think that was so dangerous, really, because, you know, I ended up sort of pushing myself to the point where I, you know, and I don't do that now, you know, and now I'm like, I talk about my arthritis all the time, and I've written a book about it, you know, but I think it's actually so important that if you are living with arthritis, you should talk to the people that you love about it, and you should let people know that you are living with this. And, you know, you'll be surprised at how much more understanding people are than, you know, than you may realize. Yeah, so I think being honest, that's the first thing, and also accepting and understanding your condition has really helped me. You know, the more you know about it, the more you can learn to live with it, and the better you
What
will feel, and the
information
better
or
you'll feel
advice
every
would you
day.
give to family and
You know.
friends for someone, you know, talking to somebody like you, or, you know, with a similar condition? Because I think in my experience, sometimes we find it quite awkward, and we don't know how to approach it, or whether we should say something, or if we should say something, what we should say.
Mm.
What for you are the most helpful things to hear?
Just being there for me and believing me, you know, and knowing that I am in pain, even if I don't look like I'm in pain. That's something that's so huge for a lot of people, I think, because it took so long to get that diagnosis, and it was so
Sure.
frustrating, and I don't look like there's anything wrong with me. The last thing you want is your family and friends to not believe you either, or not see it either. So I think just being completely understanding and appreciative of what's happening, and yeah, being there for you in your moments, and just knowing that you know, you may agree to a plan, or you may agree to something, and then nearer the time
Yeah.
you might just not have the energy, or you might be in too much pain, or you know, just having that flexibility actually as a friend or as a family member, you know, and sort of,
Do
yeah,
you wear
just
one
being
of
there
these
for them in that
lanyards? Because
way
I've
too.
seen, is it the
Yeah.
sunflower lanyard on green, which is to symbolize hidden disability, to make people aware that although they might look perfectly fine, actually there's something. It could be, you know, whether it's a mental issue or a physical issue or a pain issue, or, whatever it is. Do you think that that's a useful thing to sort of outwardly show that there is something inwardly that's invisible going on?
Yeah, I think if that's something that you need and that you will get value from, then absolutely, definitely use that. For me, I used a badge on the tube that's like, please offer me a seat when
Really?
I've got a particularly bad pain day, or, you know, and I
And
really
where
just
do
need
you
to sit
get
down.
those
Yeah,
from?
I use that for the tube, and
Really?
just on the TFL website.
And how do people
Yeah,
respond to you
and
when
you
they
can
see
just,
that?
yeah, put in your details. They do initially look at me like, "Really? Do you need a seat?" But they do give me a seat. Yeah, yeah, I haven't known anybody to look at that
That's
badge or see
amazing.
that badge and not give me a
Yeah.
seat. So people are very kind. Yeah, but it just avoids that awkward conversation, because there's been so many times when I've been stood on the
Asking you
tube
to sit
and I've
down.
looked at a seat
Yeah.
and thought, "Oh God, I really want that seat. I really just need that seat. I just need to sit down." But it's so awkward having to approach somebody and say, "Can I have your seat?" Or,
Yeah. Or
kind of
there's an
sit
older
down before
person,
someone else
perhaps,
sits down,
who would expect you to
you know,
stand up.
in yeah, or,
Mm.
and you just, yeah, it feels quite, difficult sometimes to have those
Mm.
conversations when you just don't want to, you just want to sit down. So it just avoids all of that and they read it and then you sit down. So yeah, I definitely advise
Yeah.
getting one of those, but definitely the lanyards as well. I'm sure they help in terms of when you're
Specifics.
out and
Yeah.
about, but
And
in terms of
I
getting a
guess
seat on
these days,
public
one of the
transport,
good
they
things
yeah,
about social media, and
yeah.
you must remember that there are some good things to come out of it. You've got a great Instagram, for example, which is really worth following. Are there other organisations and support groups that you found online? Are there various forums that you would recommend people belong to, or to get further information from?
Yes, absolutely. There's so many different things online and Facebook groups and Instagram accounts. And there's a charity called Versus Arthritis that I follow, Arthritis Foundation in America. And they've got some brilliant resources as well. I actually made a Facebook group as well called
Great.
Arthritis
I'll make
Foodie
sure that we
Forum,
add those links
for
at the end of
anybody
the
that
show.
wants to
Thank
chat as
you.
well on there. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, because sometimes these Facebook groups can be quite scaremongering, and can actually be quite scary places to be, and sort of people sort of
Yeah, which is not
voice all
helpful,
the bad
perhaps.
things about living with
Mm.
arthritis, and I think, which isn't helpful, because then you can end up in a real internet hole. Whereas, yeah, for Arthritis Foodie Forum, I really have tried to sort of get it to be quite a positive place of
Mm.
sharing information and things that have helped you, and
And what about the
and
future?
various bits
Are
like
there
that.
good signs
So
on the horizon? Are
yeah.
you plugged in some of the new research, some of the new medications perhaps that might be coming out, or the new treatment protocols?
Yeah, I'd like to think that there'll be more sort of therapies in the future that
Sure.
aren't as strong as the ones that I'm on. I'd love to be able to see that. But I think yeah, there's so much research happening at the moment. I mean, Versus Arthritis are actually they're a research-based charity,
Mhm.
and so they are researching at the moment into the gut microbiome and the connection with rheumatoid arthritis. That's a research paper that's happening right
Wow.
now. So I'm going to be very interested to see the results of that. So yeah, there's definitely things happening, and I think, as much as I've done so
Yeah.
much research for this book, that there's going to be more coming out over the next sort of like year, 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we
I
look
think
forward to the
the
update.
connection
Emily,
is going to
thank you
become
so
even more
much for being
stronger.
with us today and sharing
Yeah.
so much positivity. And I'll make sure that we do put all the resources online so that people can find them and find you easily. I wish you the very best of luck with everything that you're
Wonderful.
doing. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you so much, Liz.
Well, that is it for today's episode. Huge thanks to Emily. And as always, you will find the links and the resources that we talked about today over on ltheanwellbeing.com. And there you can sign up for the free weekly newsletter, which is jam packed with plenty of healthy recipes and tips for living well. Huge thanks to all of you who have left us such lovely reviews, especially on iTunes, or click those little 5-star rating buttons at the end of the show. It really does help others to find us and spread the word. So thank you. And until the next time we chat, go well. Bye-bye. The Liz Earle Wellbeing Show is presented by me, Liz Earle, with production by Amaryllis Earle and Harry Trevithick at Heart Dialogue, with thanks to my producer, Ellie Smith, assistant researcher, Martha Comerford, and guest booker, Millie de la Morinière.